This is a model in Marklin's Hamo range, which is kind of like a reissue of older stuff. And this one's in this fantastic retro looking box. At least I think it's a reissue of this box. Might actually be an original one, but it's got some great artwork on it. One of the things that Marklin did with their Hamo range was to expand their offering, because previously they all used their 3-rail track system, but with the Hamo range it promised to work on 2-rail, which is what I think this locomotive should do. And things like this logo up here makes me think this is probably a 3-rail locomotive. Anyway, without further ado, let's get this open, we'll check it out and we'll see what we've got here. Well, isn't this an impressive locomotive? It certainly looks really cool. It's a streamlined German locomotive with a 462 wheel configuration, and its number is 031055. I'm beginning to think this isn't a Hamo model. Maybe it's been put in the wrong box or something, or maybe I'm completely wrong, but it certainly has a kind of older vintage feel to this locomotive. Very heavy. I think it's mostly made of metal. But let's have a look at this closer up. Well, what a fantastic look this steam locomotive has. It's almost like it's some kind of whale or sea creature. It's got lights down the front here. I think they probably illuminate. And these fantastic buffers here, which are integrated into the body shell. They've got these white round circles here. It's getting a bit chipped on this one, but there's so much rivet detail here as well. The lining on the white here isn't too good. It's a little bit wavy in places, but you do get a really good logo on the front here, along with all this little details of these hatches, brackets, and also the rivets. Beside the chimney, we have these metal wing deflectors here. Looking down the side of the body, which is all metal, got a lot of rivet detail on this streamlining panel work, and all these little tiny hatches as well. And at the cap it's very stylish, and it has these steps coming down here. The lining again, not too good on this, and unfortunately the windows have gone yellow. I don't think it should have been like that from the factory. I might be wrong on that, but Marklin's plastics from the past did have a tendency to go yellow, especially their packaging, and maybe it's happened here on this locomotive. Up on the roof we have these vents here and some more ribs going across the top. We have the safety valves here, which is a really nice piece in the moulding of the metal. And you can see here that we have a screw to take this model apart. I think we'll do that in a moment. Round the other side of the locomotive we have a whistle here, which is made in metal and added in as an extra part. We do have some detail on the back of the firebox there, but not a huge amount of detail inside this cab. It looks as though we have a metal chassis here as well, with metal gearing too to this wheel here. It doesn't look as though the other two wheels are driven, but drive would be transmitted to them via the valve gear here. So we do have a 3-rail skid on the bottom of this locomotive, which does make me think it's actually 3-rail, but we'll give it some power in a moment and see what happens. The front pony truck here doesn't have much features on it. It's actually just a piece of pressed steel, but it is sprung loaded there, so it should stay on the track okay. The wheels are really good. They're all made of metal and they have red painted inserts, but it's all one-piece metal. So a really stylish looking locomotive, this one. Let's have a look at the tender. So this is mostly a plastic moulding, and the lining seems to be a little bit crisper on this one. Again, it has a really nice transfer in the middle there. Some rivet detail here, but this tender is quite streamlined and there isn't a lot of detail to actually pick out on this model. Underneath you can see it has metal bogies and metal wheels, very big flanges, bit of rust going on here as well, so it is getting on a bit, this model. At the back we have some metal buffers in there which are also going a little bit rusty. The coupling hanging out the back, which is attached to this bogie here, but it does have some articulation separate to the bogie and it is sprung loaded. And we have a couple of lamps there which have been picked out with some silver paint and some hatches on the back panel there. The numbers up here pretty clear as well. Some detail here where the fireman would operate. It looks quite interesting at this end of the tender, and we have this drawbar here which is metal as well to the main locomotive, but it is also a little bit rusty as well, which shows the age of this thing. So I think we should try and see if we can get some power onto the locomotive and see what happens. So I'm just going to lay it down here on its side. I actually don't have any 3-rail track to give this a test on, unfortunately, so I'm just going to put some power to it from my H&M controller as normal, just a 12 volt DC. Let's see what happens. Well, it certainly runs, which is great, but it is unfortunately 3-rail. I thought it was 2-rail when I bought it, which is a bit of a shame. But I'm interested to see what it's like inside this locomotive, so I'm going to take the body off and we'll have a look. So we do indeed have lighting at the front, but you can see with this part here that this is actually meant for 16 volt AC. So I'm actually quite surprised that this worked under DC. This would be for changing the direction of the locomotive. And you can see the motor back here. It's not the biggest motor in the world, but it certainly seems to run pretty good. What's really impressive is that the weight that you normally get inside a locomotive is actually integral into the chassis on this one, and the wiring is routed through it. That's really quite a clever piece of engineering there. And you can see that this is quite a sturdy mechanism. This model is actually really quite old now, and yet it still seems to run fine. Here we can see the metal gears coming down to this wheel at the back. So it really is a piece of clever engineering that's gone into this model, and also very robust as well. All made of metal, so it's obviously been built to last. So with it all being of metal, I expect this to be quite heavy. So let's put it on the scales and see how much it weighs. So yeah, it is pretty heavy. This model comes in at 579 grams. So this German streamlined steam locomotive from Marklin, I think is a really impressive model. It comes from an era where mechanics and robustness seem to be the primary driver on these models rather than just the finest details that you can possibly get, and then you end up with some fragile model. This one can take a few knocks. You could probably throw it against a wall and it'd still be okay, but I wouldn't recommend that. It has some fantastic looks with the streamlining on it. It almost looks space age, like it's come out of some kind of science fiction film from the 60s. And it would make for a really interesting addition to a model railway collection. I love stuff like this because it's lasted the test of time, and it's got this kind of vintage chic about it that lifts it up above the level of just being a model into something that's really quite special. For me, I wish this was a 2-rail operating model because that would work for me. I don't have a 3-rail layout, so I wouldn't be able to run it on a regular basis, but it would make for a really great collector's item. And I think if you bought this model, you'd love just looking at it, and seeing it going round on your 3-rail model railway with a rake of coaches would look absolutely fantastic. So it's a great model to have if you're into vintage model trains. Definitely look out for it if you can get your hands on one. But that's just what I think. What do you think about this steam locomotive? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. And if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps this channel. I'll put this on the turntable so you can see all the way around, and in a moment another video will appear. Just click on that and I'll see you there. But that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. See ya.